What happens when the most powerful man in the city, blinded by arrogance, tries to publicly humiliate a quiet woman, only to discover she holds the key to his redemption? And what if her unexpected defiance forces him to confront everything he believes about power and purpose? Before we delve into this high-stakes tale of transformation, integrity, and a love that blooms in the most unexpected places, hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and tell us in the comments if you believe true strength comes from humility. Nathaniel Langston hated events like this. He adjusted the cuff of his tailored black tuxedo, shifting uncomfortably in the velvet chair as polite applause rippled through the grand ballroom of the Whitmore Hotel. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, bouncing cold light off champagne flutes and designer gowns. The charity auction was in full swing, and Nathaniel, millionaire founder of Langston Tech and serial gala avoider, was regretting every second of showing up alone. He hadn't planned to attend. His name was just on the donor list, but someone on the board had texted him last minute about a surprise item being auctioned in his late mother's honor. Guilt had dragged him here. He'd slipped in through the side entrance, meticulously avoided the press, and found a quiet seat near the back. But then she sat beside him. "Excuse me, is the seat taken?" The voice was soft, but clear, carrying a quiet confidence. He looked up. Her wavy golden brown hair, slightly windblown like she'd just stepped out of a cab, framed a face of natural beauty. A navy satin dress clung to her curves in a way that was elegant but not overtly trying too hard. Her eyes? Hazel, wide, and unapologetically curious. "No," Nathaniel said, clearing his throat and gesturing to the empty chair. "It's all yours. Thanks. I'm late," she whispered as she slid in beside him, setting a small clutch on her lap. "Missed the dinner, but I'm here for the auction." He nodded, unsure why his gaze still lingered on her. She didn't seem to recognize him, which was rare. Most women at these events treated him like a prize to be won, their eyes flicking to his expensive watch or the way the staff subtly greeted him with extra politeness. But she didn't even glance at his Rolex. "I'm Nathaniel," he said, before he could stop himself. She turned, a soft smile touching her lips. Hira Bennett." She added with a grin, "I'm a school counselor. I'm here supporting one of our student scholarship programs." That explained the modest clutch and the absence of any visible designer logos. But something about her posture, the way she sat tall and sure of herself, told him she wasn't intimidated by this world. He liked that. The auctioneer's voice boomed through the microphone, dragging their attention to the stage. "Another vacation package sold for $20,000. People clapped absently while sipping wine. Hira leaned in slightly, whispering, "I still can't believe someone just spent that much on a weekend in Napa." Nathaniel laughed, a genuine, unforced sound, and it felt strange. "Good. You'd be surprised how little people value money when they have too much of it." She shot him a look. "And you speak from experience?" "Maybe," he said, trying not to smile. They watched a few more items go up. A vintage car, a diamond necklace, a week in the Maldives. Hira clapped politely, but didn't bid. She didn't even raise her card once. He noticed. Then the auctioneer announced, "Next up, a private dinner for two with celebrity chef Marcelo Venti hosted on the rooftop of the Langston Tower. All proceeds go to the Langston Foundation for Women in Tech." Nathaniel sat up straighter. That was his building. Hira blinked. "Oh wow, I didn't know they were auctioning that." He said nothing. He hadn't authorized it, but someone on his team probably did. It was his mother's foundation, after all. The bidding started. 10,000. 15. 25. Hira leaned toward him. "That view must be insane." "It is. Have you been?" He glanced sideways. "Once or twice." She tilted her head, amused by his vague answer. The auctioneer called 35,000. "Do I hear 40? A woman near the front raised her paddle. Hira sighed. "Well, that's out of my league." Nathaniel had no idea what came over him, but his hand shot up. 40,000 from the gentleman at table 23. Hira's eyes widened as everyone turned to look. "Wait, did you just?" "Yeah." He looked at her directly. I did. The auctioneer banged the gavel. Sold. To the gentleman in the back. Applause. Hira blinked at him, stunned. You just dropped $40,000. On dinner. I was hungry, he said, playing it off. She laughed then. A genuine, unforced laugh that made something in his chest tighten. A warmth he hadn't expected. You're ridiculous. He shrugged. I've been called worse. She leaned in, teasing. So, who are you taking? He looked her straight in the eye. You, if you'll come. Her smile faltered just a little, the teasing gone, replaced by a profound surprise. You don't have to do that. I know. Hira hesitated, her fingers nervously tracing the edge of her clutch. Then slowly she nodded. Okay, but you better like dessert. I love dessert. They didn't talk much after that. There was too much noise, too many people. But something had shifted between them, something quiet and electric. When the event ended, he offered to walk her out. They stepped outside into the cool New York night, the street buzzing with cars and laughter, and stood by the curb. I'm not used to nights like this, she admitted softly. Feels like another world. Nathaniel watched her carefully. You handled it like you belonged here. She gave him a side glance. And you? You clearly belong in this world. I don't know, he said, his voice lower now. Tonight felt different. They stood in silence. Finally, she turned to him. Thanks, Nathaniel, for the seat, and for the invitation. It's a date, he said, his voice firm with a new resolve. She smiled, then stepped into her cab. Nathaniel stood there in the street as the car pulled away, his hands in his pockets, heart beating a little faster than usual. He'd come alone to a charity auction, expecting to sit through a couple of speeches and leave without anyone noticing. But instead, the woman who sat beside him without knowing who he was, without wanting anything from him, was now the only thing he could think about. And he was already counting the minutes until dinner. Nathaniel checked his watch again. He stood alone on the rooftop helipad of Langston Tower, the soft glow of the city stretching far beyond the glass railing. The Langston Tower rooftop was rarely used for anything other than drone testing or board meetings. Not that he attended those in person anymore, but tonight it had been transformed. A wrought iron table for two stood under a canopy of soft string lights. A private chef station had been set up just beyond the fountain. The scent of seared saffron and truffle drifted into the air as Marcello Venti himself plated the first course. A jazz trio played low, smooth notes near the corner, their instruments gleaming under the ambient lighting, and she still hadn't arrived. Nathaniel adjusted the cuffs of his navy jacket, the silk lining sticking slightly to his wrist. He wasn't used to this kind of anticipation. His life was scheduled to the second. Meetings, mergers, and quarterly projections. But now the only thing on his mind was whether Hira would actually walk through that elevator door. A soft chime. He turned just as the elevator doors slid open. She stepped out, her heels clicking gently against the stone tile. Her dress was emerald blue, fitted at the waist and flaring just slightly at the hem like it had been made for movement. A delicate gold chain encircled her neck, and her hair was swept up, revealing the graceful line of her shoulders. You're here, he said, surprised at the relief that flooded his own voice. I said I would be, Hira replied, her gaze sweeping over the rooftop. But I didn't expect all this. I didn't expect you to say yes, he confessed, a rare vulnerability in his tone. Hira gave a quiet laugh, but her expression softened. You didn't have to go to this extent. I didn't do it out of obligation. They sat. Marcello approached, offering the first course with a brief explanation in Italian-accented English. Nathaniel didn't hear a word. He was watching how Hira studied each dish with genuine curiosity, not the rehearsed politeness he was used to from his usual dinner companions. She took a bite, closed her eyes briefly. Okay, that might be the best thing I've ever tasted. Marcello has a gift, Nathaniel agreed, though he refuses to cook for anyone who doesn't appreciate texture. Hira raised an eyebrow. That's oddly specific. He once walked out on a date of mine because she said scallops felt too soft. She laughed deeply, a rich, genuine sound that resonated within him, and he leaned back, watching her, more relaxed than he'd been in weeks. "So," she said, setting down her fork, "you work in tech, right?" "Sort of." She tilted her head. "That's vague. I founded a few companies, mostly software and AI development. My board handles the day-to-day now." "And what do you do on the day-to-day?" He hesitated, then answered honestly. "Try to remember why I started any of it." Kira studied him but didn't push. "I get that. Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing enough for my students. Like, am I actually making a difference, or just treading water? What made you choose that path?" She considered this, her fingers brushing the edge of her glass. "My little brother struggled a lot in school. He had no one to talk to. I promised myself I'd be the person I wish he'd had." Nathaniel felt something profound shift inside him. "That makes you dangerous." She blinked. "Dangerous? You know exactly who you are and what you want. That's rare." Kira looked away briefly, then back at him. "What about you? What do you want?" He hadn't expected the question. Not from her. Not tonight. "I used to think success was the answer," he said carefully. "Now I'm not so sure." They were quiet for a moment, the low jazz music filling the space between them. Then, unexpectedly, Kira said, "You know, I Googled you." He didn't flinch. "And you're more intimidating on paper and taller in real life." He laughed, not because it was funny, but because she surprised him. Constantly. "Did you find the part about me crashing a drone into the mayor's pool?" "I did," she grinned. "And I'm choosing to believe it was intentional." Nathaniel leaned forward. "You're not like anyone I've ever met." Kira looked at him, her gaze steady. "That's either a compliment or a red flag." "It's a compliment." She didn't look away. "You're not what I expected either. Honestly, I thought you'd be colder." "Most people think that." "Why?" "Because I don't let people in." Kira sat back, her expression unreadable. "Then why let me?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood and offered his hand. "Come with me." She hesitated but took it. He led her past the musicians toward the far edge of the rooftop where a telescope had been set up near a velvet bench. He adjusted the lens and gestured for her to look. She peered through it, then laughed, a soft, joyful sound. "Did you just show me the moon? I figured it was better than dessert menus." Kira turned toward him, the city lights casting soft gold across her skin. "This is ridiculous." "In a good way?" "In the best way." Nathaniel reached into his pocket and handed her a small box. "What is this?" she asked, surprised. "Open it." Inside was a thin bracelet of interwoven silver set with small sapphires. Her voice dropped. "Nathaniel, I can't accept this." "You can. And you will. Because this isn't about money. It's about moments." Kira looked up at him, her eyes suddenly vulnerable. "What are you doing?" "Trying to figure out how someone I barely know feels like the only real thing in my life." She didn't speak. He stepped closer. "Tell me I'm not the only one feeling this." "You're not." She reached for his hand, and he let her take it, grounding the moment in something quiet and real. The city pulsed below them, but up here everything slowed. He didn't know what this was yet or where it would go. But Nathaniel Langston, who had built an empire on logic and control, was suddenly willing to risk everything for the unknown. And for the first time, that didn't feel like a loss. Felt like the beginning. Nathaniel stepped into his office the next morning, his jaw tight and his mind scattered in a way he didn't recognize. He'd barely slept, too distracted by the memory of Hira's fingers wrapped in his. Her voice low under the stars, the way she looked at him like she saw something worth trusting. He didn't trust easily. And yet there she was, under his skin, without permission. "Sir." His assistant, Liam, called from the door, holding a tablet. "Board meeting in 20. They've moved it up." Nathaniel nodded. "Tell them I'll be there." Liam hesitated. "Also, there's a request from the press. They want a statement on your appearance at the Whitmore auction. There are photos. You made a bid." Nathaniel sat down slowly, loosening the top button of his shirt. Let Marcus write something. Keep it dry. Understood. Liam paused more cautiously this time, his gaze lingering. And the woman you were with, they're asking if she's yours. She's not public, Nathaniel said flatly, his voice a low warning. Leave it alone. Liam gave a short nod and backed out. Nathaniel leaned back in his chair, staring out at the skyline. The city looked different today. Sharper. Like the air had cleared somehow. He wasn't sure what to do with that. Later that week, he found himself standing outside a low brick building in Brooklyn with chipped paint and a hand-painted sign that read, Riverbend Community School. He hadn't planned on coming here, but he hadn't heard from Hira since the rooftop dinner, and that silence was clawing at him. She'd given him a glimpse behind the walls she carried, then disappeared. He stepped inside, the fluorescent lights buzzing faintly overhead. A woman at the front desk looked up. I'm here to see Hira Bennett, he said. The woman raised an eyebrow. And you are Nathaniel Langston. She blinked. Oh, right. She's in room 12. Down the hall on your left. He found the door open. Inside, Hira sat cross-legged on a carpet surrounded by a small circle of kids. She was animated, using her hands as she spoke, her expression warm but focused. The children hung on her every word. He didn't move, just watched. After a few minutes, she noticed him and gently stood, signaling to another staff member before slipping out into the hallway. I didn't know you knew where I worked, she said, her voice guarded, a hint of wariness. I asked around discreetly. So you tracked me down? I needed to see you. She folded her arms, a subtle barrier. Nathaniel, that night was beautiful. But I have a life, a job. I can't just disappear into some fairy tale. I'm not asking you to. You're not asking anything. You just showed up. He stepped closer, his voice low. Because I don't want this to be a one-night illusion. I don't want to guess whether you'll vanish again. She looked away. You live in a world that doesn't make room for people like me. You don't know my world. I've seen enough of it to know I don't belong. He exhaled, brushing a hand through his hair. Then show me yours. Hira blinked. What? I want to understand what matters to you. I want to know what your days look like. I want to see what you fight for. Her eyes narrowed slightly, suspicious. Why? Because I can't stop thinking about you. And I don't want this to be about rooftop dinners and auction bids. I want it to be real. She stared at him for a long moment. Come back tomorrow. 8 a.m. Bring coffee. Real coffee. Not that fancy imported kind. He smiled faintly. Okay. She turned to walk away, then paused. Nathaniel. Yes. Don't dress like a boardroom. You'll scare the kids. It started as a routine business dinner. A group of elite executives had gathered at a 5-star restaurant for negotiations, and Alexander had only half listened, his attention drifting somewhere else. Or rather, someone else. Olivia. She had been invited to the dinner as well. Her recent contributions to the company had more than earned her a seat at the table. Alexander had expected her to stay quiet, to simply observe. But instead, she had held her own. She debated. She presented. She spoke with intelligence, with wit, with a quiet confidence that captivated the entire room. And apparently she had captivated someone else too. Across the table, one of their key business partners, a well-dressed, charming man named Marcus Kane, was watching Olivia with undeniable interest. Alexander noticed immediately the way Marcus leaned closer, the way his eyes never left her. And then the final straw. Marcus raised his glass toward Olivia and said, Miss Parker, you're quite impressive. How about dinner? Just the two of us. The entire table fell silent. Olivia hesitated for half a second, not out of flattery, but because she was caught off guard. And before she could even answer, Alexander spoke. She's busy. His voice was sharp, firm, laced with something unmistakably possessive. Olivia's head snapped toward him, her eyes wide with surprise. Excuse me? Alexander stood abruptly, reaching for her wrist and pulling her to her feet. We need to talk, he muttered, guiding her decisively toward the terrace. Once outside, Olivia yanked her arm free. What the hell was that? Alexander ran a hand through his hair, clearly agitated. His usual composure rattled. You think you can just go to dinner with anyone? Olivia crossed her arms, an amused smirk playing on her lips. Are you seriously telling me who I can and can't have dinner with? His jaw tightened. I'm saying Kane isn't interested in business. And you know it. She raised an eyebrow, a silent challenge in her eyes. Why do you care? Silence. Alexander looked away for half a second, just long enough for her to see the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. I don't want you to be taken advantage of, he said finally, his voice oddly strained. Olivia studied him, her gaze searching, perceptive. There was something unspoken in his words, something deeper, something that didn't quite fit the ruthless CEO persona. And then it hit her. Oh my God, she whispered, realization dawning, a soft gasp escaping her lips. You're jealous. Alexander stiffened, a flicker of pure panic in his eyes. I am not. Olivia laughed a soft, knowing laugh, a sound that utterly disarmed him. For the first time, Alexander Reed looked genuinely flustered. She took a step closer, tilting her head slightly, her eyes twinkling with amusement. You totally are. Alexander gritted his teeth, a quiet curse escaping his lips. Go back inside, Parker. But as Olivia turned to leave, she couldn't wipe the triumphant smirk off her face. And Alexander? He let out another quiet curse under his breath. Because he knew she was right. He was jealous, and he had no idea what to do about it. After that night, things shifted. Alexander was still Alexander, still arrogant, still impossible at times. But something was distinctly different. He no longer threw careless insults her way. Instead, he started subtly noticing when she was overwhelmed with work. And he helped. Not in obvious ways that would compromise her pride, but in small, almost magical ones. Like the time she had been drowning in paperwork, and somehow, half of it mysteriously disappeared from her desk, processed and approved ahead of schedule. Or the time her old laptop crashed, and before she could even submit a tech request, a sleek new one, top of the line, arrived on her desk. At first, she didn't want to believe it had anything to do with him. She told herself it was just coincidence. But then, one evening, she caught him. She had forgotten her phone in the conference room and went back to retrieve it, only to find Alexander standing by her desk, casually placing a neatly wrapped sandwich beside her computer. He hadn't noticed her yet, and for a brief, unguarded moment, she saw it. Not the ruthless CEO, not the arrogant businessman, just a man who, despite his best efforts, was starting to care. Something warm and unfamiliar settled in her chest. Maybe, just maybe, Alexander Reed wasn't entirely terrible. Alexander Reed had never been afraid of anything. Deals worth billions? Negotiations with ruthless businessmen? Controlling an entire global empire? Easy. But this was terrifying. He had spent the last few weeks watching Olivia Parker slip past every wall he had carefully built around himself. And worse, he had inadvertently led her. He noticed her in ways he never should have. How she bit her lip when she was deep in thought. How she tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear when she was frustrated. How the mere sight of her, the sound of her laughter, the way she challenged him, the way she was simply Olivia, felt like the only thing in his meticulously calculated life that wasn't planned, wasn't controlled. And that scared the hell out of him. Because he knew exactly how this story ended. Love wasn't a luxury someone like him could afford. He had seen what it did. His parents' tumultuous marriage was proof enough. His father had always put the company first, obsessively. His mother had begged for more time, more attention, more of him. And in the end, heartbroken and defeated, she left. Alexander had promised himself he would never let that happen to him. He would never let love make him weak. So he made a decision. A stupid, painful decision. He would push her away. Before he lost control completely. What do you think is the biggest challenge Alexander faces in accepting his true feelings? And what kind of impact will this revelation have on Olivia? Share your insights in the comments below. If this story of unexpected emotions is captivating you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for the next thrilling chapter. Olivia had been walking toward the conference room, her thoughts already on her next task. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop. But then she heard her name, and she stopped motionless. The door was slightly ajar. Inside, Alexander was speaking with Marcus Kane, the very business partner who had asked her to dinner. Marcus let out a low chuckle. "So, Alexander, rumor has it you've taken quite an interest in Miss Parker." Olivia's heart pounded, a frantic drum against her ribs. She waited. She desperately hoped for Alexander to deny it, to say something, anything that would prove her suspicions wrong. But then his voice came, flat, unfeeling, cold. "I don't have time for distractions like that." Olivia's breath hitched, a sharp, ragged intake of air. Marcus raised an eyebrow, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "Distractions?" Alexander sighed, a sound of dismissive irritation. "She's good at her job, but that's all. Relationships are a waste of time." A sharp, hollow pain pierced through Olivia's chest. She had been a fool, a naive, hopeful fool. She had let herself believe that Alexander Reed, the arrogant CEO who once mocked her, who had spent years looking down on her, could actually care. That he could be more than just a boss, more than just a temporary flicker of interest. But she had been wrong, profoundly, painfully wrong. He had never seen her as anything more than a passing amusement. Something temporary, something replaceable. She turned and walked away, her footsteps muffled by the carpet, before she could hear another agonizing word. Because she had heard enough. What do you think is the deepest pain Alexander inflicted on Olivia with his words? And how will this crushing rejection fuel her next move? Share your raw emotions in the comments below. If this story of betrayal and a shattered heart has you gripped, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for the next pivotal chapter. Olivia didn't go home that night. She went straight to her desk, straight to her resignation letter. And by morning she was gone. Alexander Reed had never cared when people left him. Employees came and went. Business partners switched alliances driven by profit. Lovers drifted away, convenient and temporary. It was simply how life worked. But when Olivia Parker walked out of his life, something inside him irrevocably cracked. At first, he told himself it was nothing. She was just an employee, nothing more. But the first morning without her at the office, he felt it. The gnawing emptiness. The way his perfectly brewed coffee tasted bitter without her sarcastic remarks in the break room. The way his high-stakes meetings felt dull, lifeless, without her sharp intellect challenging his opinions. The way his vast office felt colder, quieter, utterly devoid of purpose. Work became meaningless. Numbers blurred together on his screens. Profits, once his sole obsession, no longer excited him. Because what was the point of building an empire? He had spent his entire life accumulating wealth and power. But now he had no one to share it with. And then it hit him. A realization that struck him with the force of a physical blow. He had been wrong. About everything. Olivia wasn't just another employee. She wasn't a distraction. She was the one person who had ever truly seen him, the man beneath the CEO's mask. And he had let her go. He couldn't let that be the end of their story. So, with a desperation he had never known, he did the only thing that made sense. He went after her. Alexander Reed wasted no time. He had to find her. It took some digging, leveraging every contact, every resource he had, but Alexander finally found Olivia. She had started working with a non-profit organization dedicated to helping young women build careers in business. And tonight, she was the keynote speaker at their annual charity gala. Alexander didn't hesitate. He arrived at the prestigious event, dressed in his usual impeccable tailored suit. But for the first time in his life, he wasn't there as CEO Alexander Reed. He was just a man in love, desperate for a second chance. The moment he stepped inside the glittering ballroom, his eyes found her. Olivia stood on stage, poised and confident, speaking passionately to the captivated audience. She was brilliant. She was breathtaking. And Alexander knew, with a certainty that shook him to his core, that he had never wanted anything more than he wanted her. So, as soon as she finished speaking, before the applause even faded, before anyone else could react, he made his move. Alexander walked straight onto the stage, a beacon of determination cutting through the spotlight. The entire room fell silent, every eye fixed on him, utterly bewildered. Olivia turned, her eyes widening in profound shock as she recognized him. "Alexander?" she whispered, her heartbeat racing, a frantic drum against her ribs. He took a deep, steadying breath, gripping the microphone stand. "I was wrong," he said, his voice firm but trembling with raw emotion. Murmurs rippled through the stunned crowd. Olivia stared at him, tears welling in her eyes, her mind a whirlwind of confusion and disbelief. Alexander swallowed hard. He had never done anything so reckless, so vulnerable, so completely out of character in his life. But for her, he would do anything. "I judged you for the way you dressed," he admitted, his voice raw with regret. "I dismissed you because I was too arrogant to see who you truly were." Alexander took a hesitant step closer, ignoring the audience entirely. "I thought I didn't have time for love," he confessed, his gaze fixed solely on her. "I thought it would make me weak." His voice dropped to a choked whisper, for her ears alone. "But then you left, and I realized the only thing that makes me weak is losing you." Olivia's eyes glistened, tears spilling freely now. "I love you, Olivia," Alexander said, his voice cracking with a fierce, undeniable truth. "I don't care about the past. I don't care about anything except you." The crowd held their breath, suspended in the intensity of the moment. And then Olivia spoke. What words do you think Olivia will choose to respond to Alexander's monumental confession? And what profound impact will this public declaration have on their future? Share your raw emotions and predictions in the comments below. If this story of an unshakable love overcoming immense odds is captivating you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for the next thrilling chapter. Olivia had spent weeks trying to forget him, trying desperately to convince herself that Alexander Reed didn't deserve her. But standing here on this stage, looking into his eyes, seeing the raw truth, the profound vulnerability, the undeniable love shining back at her, she knew. He meant it. This wasn't the cold, arrogant man she had met months ago. This was someone who had truly changed. For her, tears slipped silently down her cheeks. She took a slow, shaky breath and, through her tears, a radiant smile bloomed on her face. "You idiot," she whispered, the words filled with a complex mix of affection and disbelief. Alexander let out a breathless laugh, a sound of pure relief. "Is that a yes?" Olivia nodded, tears streaming freely now. "Yes," she whispered. Then, louder, clearer, filled with every ounce of her soul. "Yes, Alexander. 1,000 times, yes." The room erupted in a deafening wave of applause, shouts, and cheers. But Alexander didn't hear any of it, because in the next moment, Olivia was in his arms, pressing her lips fiercely to his, pouring into him every word she couldn't say. And for the first time in his life, Alexander Reed knew with an absolute, undeniable certainty. He had finally found something worth more than all the money in the world. Alexander Reed, a man who once thought love was a weakness, now knew better. He stood in the middle of a breathtaking garden, illuminated by soft golden lights and fragrant with fresh white roses, waiting for the only woman who had ever truly mattered. Tonight was the night. He had spent the past year meticulously earning her trust, proving his love not just through words, but through countless, consistent actions. And now he was finally ready to take the next most terrifying and most exhilarating step. Olivia entered the garden, her eyes widening in surprise. "Alexander, what is all this?" she asked softly, taking in the fairy lights that twinkled like captured stars, the candlelit path, and the intimate table set for two. Alexander smiled, a nervous tremor in his hands as he took her hand. "Just a small dinner," he said, leading her toward the table. Olivia gave him a knowing look, a hint of playful amusement in her eyes. Alexander Reed doesn't do small anything. He chuckled, but there was a distinct nervousness in his gaze. They ate, they laughed, they talked, their conversation flowing easily as it always did. But Alexander could barely focus, because he was about to change both of their lives forever. As the night deepened, he finally stood, reaching into his pocket. Olivia's breath caught, her eyes fixed on his hand, her heart hammering. Alexander dropped to one knee, opening a small velvet box. Inside, nestled on a bed of satin, was a stunning diamond ring, simple yet elegant, its brilliance mirroring the light in her eyes. For the first time in his life, Alexander Reed looked at someone not as a business investment, not as a deal to be won, but as his future. "Olivia Parker," he said, his voice steady but filled with raw, overwhelming emotion. "I used to think love was a distraction. I thought it would make me weak." His gaze held hers, unwavering. "But then you walked into my life, and suddenly, nothing else made sense." Olivia's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "You changed me. You made me better. And now I can't imagine a single day without you." A soft gasp escaped her lips. "So, Olivia," he continued, his heart pounding a furious rhythm against his ribs, "will you marry me?" What do you think is the deepest meaning of Alexander's proposal, given his past and his transformation? And how will Olivia's response forever change their lives? Share your raw emotions and predictions in the comments below. If this story of an unexpected love blooming from the ashes of old wounds is captivating you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for the next thrilling chapter. For a timeless moment, there was only silence, broken by the gentle rustle of leaves in the night breeze. Then, with tears streaming down her face, Olivia let out a choked, joyful laugh. "You idiot," she whispered, the words filled with a complex mix of affection and disbelief. Alexander let out a breathless laugh of relief. "Is that a yes?" Olivia nodded, tears blurring her vision, but her smile was radiant, utterly certain. "Yes," she whispered. Then, louder, clearer, filled with every ounce of her soul. "Yes, Alexander. 1,000 times yes." The garden erupted in a deafening wave of applause, shouts, and cheers. But Alexander didn't hear any of it, because in the next moment, Olivia was in his arms, pressing her lips fiercely to his, pouring into him every word she couldn't say. And for the first time in his life, Alexander Reed knew with an absolute, undeniable certainty. He had finally found his forever. 1 year later, their wedding was a dream. Not because of a grand venue or extravagant details, but because it was real. When Olivia walked down the aisle, her eyes locked on his, Alexander knew he had never been more certain of anything in his life. But beyond the wedding, what mattered most was what they built together. With Olivia's fierce passion and Alexander's immense resources, they launched the Parker Reed Initiative, a program dedicated to helping young women build their careers in business, providing them with the mentorship and opportunities that Olivia had once fought so hard to earn on her own. Their days were filled with profound purpose. Their nights were filled with laughter, quiet conversations, and a love that grew deeper with every shared breath. And every morning, when Alexander woke up next to the woman who had utterly changed his life, he knew he had finally found something money could never buy: happiness, unwavering love, and a future worth everything. They spent their honeymoon in Italy. Alex came too, of course. It wasn't a conventional start to a marriage, but then, neither of them had lived conventional lives. They walked along cobbled streets in Florence, shared gooey gelato in Venice, and danced barefoot under the stars in the gardens of a small villa overlooking the coast. Olivia laughed more in those 2 weeks than she had in the last decade, her joy a symphony Alexander silently memorized. And at night, with Alex asleep in the next room, they whispered promises to each other beneath soft sheets and open windows. Not perfect, but real. Always real. What do you think is the biggest secret a couple can keep from each other? And how do you believe Alexander and Olivia will navigate this unexpected challenge to their new family? Share your insights in the comments below. If the story of love and hidden truths is gripping you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for the next pivotal chapter. Then came the call. Late one afternoon, back in Manhattan, as the city groaned beneath the oppressive summer heat, Olivia stepped into her clinic for a regular shift and was met by her director. "There's something you should see," the woman said, handing her an unmarked envelope. Inside, a printed article draft. Unpublished. The title screamed, "The Nurse, the Billionaire, and the Other Son." Olivia's heart stopped. The article claimed Alexander had a second child. A son born of an affair during his marriage to Grace, now living abroad. The piece insinuated Olivia had agreed to marry him only after discovering this information, as part of a quiet arrangement to keep the story from going public. It was a lie, a cruel, precise one, but it felt deeply personal, because someone had gone digging. Too deep, too close. That night, Olivia asked him, "Alexander, is there something I don't know?" He stared at her, stunned. "No," he said slowly, his voice clear. "There's no other child. No hidden life. I swear to you." Her voice was quiet, steady. "Then why does this feel so specific?" He sat down, then exhaled something heavy. A truth held captive for years, a ghost from his past. "There was someone, before you, after Grace died. It wasn't serious. But she told me she was pregnant a few weeks before she disappeared. I hired a private investigator. She'd left the country. I never confirmed anything." He looked up, his eyes raw. "I haven't told anyone, not even my lawyers, because I didn't want to chase ghosts." Olivia stood still, absorbing the revelation. "Alexander, if there's even a chance." "I know." Silence filled the room. Then she asked, quietly, "What would you do if it were true?" He didn't hesitate, his gaze firm. "I'd find him. I'd bring him home." The story leaked within days. Not the full, drafted article, but a devastating headline, a whisper, a grainy photograph of Alexander exiting a building he hadn't entered in years, hinting at a secret life. The media ran with it. Reed scandal buried by marriage? Olivia kept her head down. She went to work. She loved Alex, but she felt the shift. On the street, in the grocery store, even at the clinic, where some parents looked at her like they weren't sure whether to admire or judge her. Alexander stayed silent publicly, fiercely protecting Olivia. Privately, he searched. Within a week, he had a name, Leo, 6 years old, living in Marseille, France, with a woman who'd changed her name and refused contact with anyone from her past. And a DNA test confirmed it. He was Alexander's son. Olivia read the report in silence, then looked at Alexander, her eyes filled with a new, complex understanding. "So what now? I go get him." She nodded, a profound resolve settling over her. "I'm coming with you." Marseille was warm and quiet, its streets buzzing with summer markets and vibrant music. But Olivia could feel the tension in Alexander's shoulders as they stood outside the small, yellow house on the hillside. The door opened slowly. The woman who stood there was thinner than the photograph, her eyes tired and guarded. And behind her, a boy, dark curls, big serious eyes. He looked remarkably like Alex. Alexander stepped forward, his voice a gentle, hopeful whisper. "Hi, Leo. I think I might be your dad." Leo said nothing, but he didn't run. And that, Alexander knew, was enough for a start. They stayed in France for 2 weeks. Olivia watched, captivated, as Alexander slowly, patiently built trust with a boy who'd only known shadows of him. They played cards, kicked a soccer ball in the sun, talked about outer space and exotic animals and the delights of American breakfasts. Leo didn't call him Dad, not yet, but when they said goodbye at the airport, the boy ran after Alexander and hugged him tight, clinging to him. "Will I see you again?" he asked, his voice small. Alexander knelt, his eyes welling. "I promise." Back in Manhattan, Olivia tucked Alex into bed. He looked up at her with sleepy eyes. "Do I still get to keep you forever?" he asked, his voice small. Olivia kissed his forehead, a profound sense of certainty filling her. "Always." But that night, As she lay beside Alexander, he whispered something into the dark. Do you ever think this is too much for you? All of it. Olivia turned to face him, her heart overflowing. No, she said. I think life finally stopped taking and started giving, and I think we're just getting started. He reached for her hand beneath the covers, their fingers intertwining. 6 months later, the Manhattan townhouse felt entirely different. Louder, warmer, truly lived in. Leo was moving in permanently. It had taken time, months of complex paperwork, sensitive therapy sessions, countless meetings with lawyers and mediators. But Alexander had been unwavering, patient, gentle, present, and Leo had responded, slowly, cautiously, but surely. He still didn't call Alexander Dad, but he called him when he had a nightmare, and that, Alexander knew, meant more than any title. Olivia, meanwhile, had become the quiet, steady center of their burgeoning household. She didn't push. She simply listened. She gave Leo the space he needed, and he, in turn, slowly gave her his trust. Alex adjusted faster than anyone expected. He proudly told everyone he had a bonus brother, and he particularly liked that Leo was good at Legos but terribly bad at Mario Kart. The boys were different, one loud and imaginative, the other cautious and careful, but somehow, beautifully, they worked, just like the two people raising them. Olivia stepped into her clinic role full-time again, but this time, it wasn't about proving anything to anyone. She focused her immense energy on community programs, bringing vital, accessible care to children without resources. She established a scholarship in Benjamin's name, her late brother's, ensuring his memory would fuel new dreams. Alexander matched every donation, but only after asking her explicit permission, a testament to the respect she had truly earned. He knew better now. In late fall, as the vibrant leaves fell and the holidays approached, Alexander planned something quiet. No press.
No spectacle.
Just family. He brought Olivia back to the Vermont cabin one weekend. Just the two of them. They hiked, talked, held each other under the vast, star-filled sky. And on the final night, beneath the canopy of 1,000,000 stars, he surprised her with a second ring. Simple, elegant, engraved inside with the words, "Not because I lost, but because I found." Olivia didn't cry this time. She just smiled, kissed him slowly, and whispered, "Forever." They didn't need a second wedding. They had a second life. And that was enough. Months later, Olivia found out she was pregnant. She sat with the test in the bathroom for 20 stunned minutes. Not scared, just utterly overwhelmed by the sheer, unadulterated joy. Alexander walked in, saw her face, and immediately dropped to his knees. "Are you okay?" he asked. She nodded, silent, then handed him the test. His eyes widened, then filled with tears. He held her for a long, quiet moment, whispering, "You're incredible," over and over until she believed it too. They told the boys together. Alex screamed with joy, throwing his arms around them both. Leo didn't say anything at first, just went quiet. Later that night, Olivia found him sitting alone on the stairs. "You okay?" He looked up. "I don't know how to be a big brother." She sat beside him, pulling him close. "Neither did Alex. Neither did I when I had my brother. You don't have to be perfect, Leo. You just have to be you. That's enough." He leaned into her shoulder. "Do I still get to stay?" Her throat tightened. She looked him in the eyes, her voice filled with unwavering love. "You're not going anywhere." When their daughter was born, a tiny, perfect bundle, they named her Elena, after Olivia's mother. Leo held her first, his small hands surprisingly gentle. Alex sang to her, off-key but full of love. Alexander cried harder than anyone, tears of pure, unadulterated joy. And Olivia, she just watched the life she never imagined unfold around her, piece by piece, like the final perfect snap of a complex puzzle falling into place. One evening, years later, Olivia stood in the hallway outside the nursery. Elena had just fallen asleep in Alexander's arms, her tiny head nestled against his chest. Leo was in the living room, reading aloud to Alex. And the whole house was lit with the kind of soft, golden light that only exists when love has earned its way in, when a family is profoundly, beautifully home. Alexander came to stand behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, pulling her gently back against his chest. "You okay?" he asked. She leaned back into him, completely at peace. "I'm better than okay. I'm alive." He smiled, kissing the top of her head, his voice rough with emotion. "I never said thank you." "For what?" she whispered. "For saving Alex. For saving me." She turned in his arms, her eyes meeting his, filled with a love that transcended words. "I didn't save you, Alexander. You let yourself be saved." Outside, snow began to fall. Soft, quiet, real. And inside, their life went on. Messy, beautiful, unscripted, and utterly true. Built not from perfect beginnings, but from boundless second chances. Alexander Reed once thought that success was everything. That power, wealth, and control were all that mattered. But then came Olivia Hayes, the woman who proved him wrong. She wasn't just another employee. She wasn't just a passing distraction. She was his greatest challenge, his greatest lesson, his greatest love. And in the end, it wasn't power or money that changed his life. It was her. Now they stand together, not just as husband and wife, but as partners in life, in love, and in purpose. Because love isn't just about finding someone, it's about choosing them every single day. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Soul Stirring Stories. Turn on notifications so you never miss another heartwarming, emotional tale. Because sometimes, the most unexpected stories lead to the most unforgettable love. Love has the power to change everything, if we're brave enough to let it.